everybody now, and we can start our second webinar of the webinar series that is held by ODA. We will have 2 more webinars at this series, and this one is called the BimRv Interoperability Toolkit for Autodesk Revit files. Let me please introduce the persons who participate in this webinar from Open Design Alliance side. It is Ivan Serbinovsky, BimRv Team Lead, Alexey Korolev, BimRv Software Engineer, and me, Alexander Borovikov, Customer Experience Team Lead. And the plan of our webinar is the following. First of all, we'll provide a brief overview of the SDK. Then we'll enumerate the possibilities of what you can do with BimRv, the main block, the main part. The next little block will be dedicated to what's next, our near future plans, and the fourth part will be questions and answers session. We engage you to ask your questions in the chat box now, so we can now during the presentation, as soon as some questions occur, so we can prepare, proceed them meanwhile, and answer as many questions as possible. So probably some of them will be duplicated, so we can group them and provide as more information as possible. As for the time estimates, the presentation part will take about half an hour, and basing on the previous experience, the questions and answers session takes about an hour. So 1 hour and a half, that's the overall estimate. And let us start with overview what BimRv product is and what goals it has. So the goals of the products were the following: to work with the RVT and IFA files, to leverage existing ODA advantages in BIM and CAD area, and thus to open new technical and new solution opportunities for our existing and potential members. And to achieve the enumerated goals, the following approaches were to be implemented, the following steps were taken. Cross-platform C++ was chosen as the language to implement this product. On one hand, Open Design Alliance have a significant expertise in this area in C++ development, and thus we could use it and guarantee good result. On the other hand, cross-platform C++ would disclose opportunities to work with Autodesk Revit files not on Windows only, but on other non-Windows platforms, for instance, Linux and macOS. We also decided to use kernel SDK as the common part for our BimRv SDK, so it would give us several advantages. The key ones are that it would increase the overall maturity of the project, and on the other hand, it would help us to achieve compatibility with other ODA SDKs. And from the administrative point of view, it was decided to organize this work as the special interest group in this format because so to group all the companies, all our members that are interested in this project, thus they form the additional funding budget and get the results of the work of those dedicated group of engineers. And now the main block of what you can do with BimRv, and the plain answer is that you are able to extend your application with Revit data access, and thus enlarge the amount of your capabilities, thus enlarge your target audience and the amount of your end users. But if to speak in more details, it's necessary to say that with BimRv, you can achieve the customized workflow for your solution. So there are no limitations to what type of application, what type of solution you can design with BimRv SDK. So for instance, basing on the information that is known to us. It's possible to create console data extractors when you just extract the necessary data from some large collection of Revit files. There is conversion tools when you are able to convert the data from convert the files from RVT to some other format like PDF or whatever. And visualization solutions when you are able to visualize the model that is stored in the Revit file and do some operations with that model or whatever, and etc. So there are no limitation for it. And what's more important, as I say, it's possible to utilize and to deploy all those types of applications on various platforms, not Windows only, but Windows, Linux, and Mac OS, and that is achieved by usage of cross-platform C++ as the implementation. And now a more technical view on the capabilities of BimRv that allow all those possibilities, so that allow all the enumerated things to be possible. First of all, it is full access to Revit data. As you see, we are able to access the data with version Revit data files version starting with 2011 and finishing with 2020. But there were, as you see, there are two items. For versions 2011 to 2014, we are able to read the data only, so it's possible to load the file and to obtain the data that is stored there. And starting with 2015, it's possible also to load and then to save the data to the file of the newest 2020 version. That's the difference that's related to some changes that take place starting with 2015, and it turns inefficient to provide safe support for the earlier versions. As for the API, and again, as for the access, it's necessary to pay attention to the following. Our API provides access to all the data that is stored in Revit files, but developers who are familiar with Revit API, they find some differences because we provide access really to all the data that is stored in the Revit file, but Revit API hides some of the data and doesn't provide access to it. So you are able to see more data in the Revit file with our API. And another difference is that another specific feature probably of the Revit API is that it operates with not only data as is, but with data calculation and interpretation, not probably correct, but a simple example. Let's say you have height and width in the file, but Revit API returns you the square less multiplying height and width. So we have two types of API, so-called generated API that provides direct data access, and you can access all the data that is stored. And we also have custom API manually written that also uses in a similar way this data interpretation, and it's in some way more similar to Revit API, and for some developers it's more habitual to work with that. So please, it's necessary to take that into consideration and not to be surprised with some additional data that you can find in the model. What else? We have another feature that makes it possible. It's an interactive visualization, and it's very easy to try it. We have an example, ODA BIM APP, that has all the basic operations implemented, and now we will run it. Let us open some file. And let us visualize it. First visualization usually takes some time, and it's also necessary to take into consideration that screencasting also occupies some resources. Okay, I think this model is probably familiar. So as you can see, all the basic operations are available. I didn't close the previous command. So it's possible to pan, zoom, rotate, and whatever, all the basic, all the essential, all the necessary operations for 3D models to view them in a comfortable way. It's possible also to change the visual styles, and as you saw when I opened the model, it's possible to select the views and switch between the views that are stored in the model. So that's the menu item, so you can pick up any of the views available. But what's more important, you can also create your custom views if you find it necessary, and let us switch back. There is a special command to do this. Let's call it, for instance, test view. And now that you can see that in the views, they appeared in your view that we have just created. So let's move on, and other useful capabilities that are available in the SDK and illustrated in the example are various exports to DWF, to SVG, to 2D PDF, to Collada, to JSON, and to OBJ. But currently the most popular one is export to JSON, and we will illustrate you how it is possible. So export, let's export for instance hierarchy to JSON. Call it JSON. And now you see there appeared the file. Oh, sorry. Sorry. You can see all the hierarchy objects are available here in this file. But exports are not only the features available. We also have an import feature available, and it is the import from Collada to a Revit file, and we will illustrate this possibility as well, but we will make this example more interesting a little bit. We will take an architecture DWG model, export its geometry to Collada, and then we will import this geometry data in Collada format to a Revit file and see the result. So let's perform this. Close the example for now. Let us open the MFC application. So you can see it's an architecture model, a model of a house. Now let us export it to Collada. That's the file we've just created. Now let us open some sample file and import the geometry data. Importing will take some time, and it's necessary to pay attention that we input only geometry data. So when the information was converted from architecture DWG to Collada, we didn't convert windows to windows, doors to doors, roofs to roofs, but we only extracted to this file their geometry representation, and this geometry representation was imported to the Revit file as well. So you see what we get. That's the geometry representation. It looks quite similar to what we have in our DWG model, but as I said, it's a geometry representation only. So there are triangles, rectangles, similar things, but not the actual walls, doors, or other architecture objects. But we know that there are a set of applications, and this feature already facilitates the tasks for some of our members and for their customers. So it is obviously worth mentioning and showing it. So let us move further. And a couple of comments. So as you saw during this export and import procedure, we created non-parametric geometry. We are also able to create node-hosted families, and for instance, couple of illustrations from our development conference, and probably some of them who saw the videos from the conference or visited the conference sees this kitchen. All this is possible to create with our SDK, and all those entities can be created. And now let us move on. And as I mentioned, we have kernel SDK as the common part for BimRv SDK, and we also consider the compatibility of BimRv with other ODE SDKs, and because it can provide additional facilities and additional capabilities for our members. And it's important to mention it because for all the members of BimRv Special Interest Group have access to all the SDKs of the standard package. Thus, all those capabilities are available for them. And first of all, it's necessary to mention the extended visualize capabilities with our Visualize SDK. So if we use our ODE Visualize viewer, we are able to work with Revit models in more impressive way, I would say, than, for instance, with ODE BIM application. Now we'll load a really big model, and loading and vectorization of this model will take a significant time. It's a big model of quite a large building, and we'll illustrate some of the capabilities that are available with our Visualize SDK combined with our BimRv SDK. A couple of words of how the input to Visualize SDK is performed. Visualize SDK operates with its own internal VSF format, so compatibility with other formats is implemented by implementing auxiliary models that perform conversion from some format to VSF. So BimRv and Visualize SDK combined give the opportunity to implement such a model and use it. And after that, Visualize SDK as a general purpose visualization SDK is able to proceed to work with the data. So it will take some time. This approach has many advantages because it's quite easy to provide such extended support for some custom formats, so it's necessary just to create a conversion model. What we have, we are able to select and hide an element, for instance. We're able to introduce a cutting plane, for instance. Another useful feature is collision detection, but it's necessary to pay attention that this is the collision detection for geometry, not again for entities, for architectural or other entities, but for geometry. But it's also a useful feature that is already being used and facilitates the work with the models and facilitates the implementation of a wide variety of tasks. So it's also worth mentioning it. And what's more important, it's possible also to get the DWG representation of the model loaded to visualize SDK. So in some way, we can say that we have such an indirect conversion from RVT to DWG. But again, here we should speak not about the entities, but about the geometry. So let us export into DWG. As I said, the model is quite big, so this export procedure also will take some significant time as well. Okay, it's done. Let us open the result. Again, due to the size of the model, the loading and vectorization and visualization will take some significant time. So that's what we get. It's not ideally the same, and but it looks quite similar to what we had in the Revit model. So this capability also allows us to increase the interoperability between various solutions, various applications and similar things, and increase the overall interoperability between RVT and DWG formats. Let us move on, and as I mentioned, we are able to convert our data to our internal VSF format, but our OpenCloud SDK works exactly with the same VSF format, and that means that we are able to work with and visualize Revit models in browser. Now using our OpenCloud solution. And it's necessary to mention that our OpenCloud solution is currently the only possibility to visualize Revit models on mobile. If you need this task, if you need to visualize the Revit models on mobile, you can use our Open Cloud SDK. So, in a couple of words of what's next, what we plan for the nearest future plans. First of all, it's the goal to achieve production state of blend and not hosted family instance, and the beta state of sweat blend, hosted family instance, and forms Boolean operations. So those are the near future plans, and they are expected to appear at the beginning and the first part of summer. So, and they should be available. We are working also on the conversion from Revit to IFC, but we'll provide update about this about the progress of this task during our next webinar that will take on May 20th and will be dedicated to IFC SDK. So briefly, that's it with the presentation part, and now we are able to switch to our question.
Hello everyone, I'm Ivan Serbinovsky. I'm team lead BimRv project, the BimRv project. And hello, thank you for hosting. Will you be allowing compatibility to save RFA in 2019, 2020, or only must current version? And we save files only in latest version. Currently, this is a 2020 file format for BimRv, and we can open any file beginning from 2015, convert them to the latest, and save on the latest version. Is it possible to save Revit files? It's only about previous version saving. We save. Or can the API only support 7 latest in unfortunately, saving previous versions, this means from the format point of view, possibility to convert files in the previous version format, and Revit doesn't have such possibility. It also doesn't work on such possibility because it's not so trivial task, and it's require additional a lot of resources for estimation how it can be done, and what we should done with new version which are available in the new files, and how this data should be stored in the previous file formats, because the file formats internally doesn't have such possibility like proxy objects individual, something like that, where we can store new data to the format of the just geometry. Next question: Do you plan to static linkable library for BimRv SDK? No, we don't have plan to store a static library for BimRv files. We stopped to support static library several years before, because file format itself has a lot of data inside. It currently contains more than 20 or 42 hundreds of classes. We have a lot of data in libraries. We cannot decrease the number of this data. And we also have additional libraries for conversion for each file format to the latest file format. And all this data should be stored in the one file for the static. And this is a problem for compiler and linkage. And such application usually cannot be built. Even this situation was 3 years before, and currently the number of code decreasing, and it's impossible now. By this reason, I don't see any chance to restore support on static libraries. Next question. We are using C# with your own engine, so it is possible to get all information from your library without any rendering agent. Yes, you can begin from C# and .NET. At the moment, we don't have wrappers for BimRv SDK, but if you're using our SDK, you can use it for reading, getting any data from the file format. You can use it also for visualization if you want. If you don't want to use visualization, you can just open the file, get the data, convert it to your own representation, and use it in your file format. And later you can convert them back, but this functionality is not so big because currently we have restriction for creation number of elements. You can create geometry, any geometry, but there is an issues with creation of element file formats like different walls, roofs, floors, and so on, because each element have a lot of complexity inside, and all this information should be researched and repeated during creation on our side. By this reason, creation of elements are implemented not so fast like reading. The next one, what data would be accessible in ODA that the Revit API doesn't provide. When we read a file, we provide possibility to get any data which are stored inside the file format. But the Revit usually have the APIs like a small part of the internal C++ API, and providing only data which they think should be available for the customer. We provide any data which we see inside the file format. For example, previous weeks we have a question about color in rooms on the different floors, and how this information can be get. We can provide this information for you, but when we try to find example inside Revit API, I cannot find any possibility to get this information. It's available through the user interface. You can create some scheme and change it, but I don't see any possibility. Of course, they can add something in future, but this is one of example which data you can get from outside, and some restriction from the API. Is there any?
While Ivan is speaking, the next technical question, I will answer the administrative one. Is there any kind of way to try the API to see if it fits the requirements of a specific development project? Can we use Open Cloud for RFA or only RVT? Yes, you can use the BimRv for RFA as well. Both formats are supported. And as for trying, we have trial archives that are available. Both our existing members and potential members can request trial archives. There is a limitation about trial archives. They are Windows only, but as I said, all our products are cross-platform C++, so the same capabilities will be available on Linux and macOS. So you can request the trial archives, download them, and they work for 60 days. You can play around and evaluate all the necessary features with the trial archives without any problems. Just visit our site, apply for free trial, and get them. So please, Ivan, go ahead.
The next question: can we use Open Cloud for RFA or only RVT files? Open Cloud can visualize using BimRv SDK for Open Revit files, so they can read RFA file, RVT files, RTE files, any Revit files. And so this means Open Cloud even visualize also can open this file and visualize the data on the site. Next question is for DAE to
Does the BimRv SDK have .NET wrappers? Not for now. Ivan also already answered this question. And one more question. Got a few colleagues that can't join the webinar due to the time zone. Any chance we could get a recording later? Yes, we provide the recording of the webinar, and we'll send the link to the record of the webinar to all the attendees, so you will be able to watch it, but it will take some time to process the raw materials.
Questions about conversion Collada files to Revit file format and future direction. Collada Import, this is example in BimRv SDK, and during importing Collada file, we get information about meshes inside the Collada, and we create this geometry in our file format. We create in DirectShape elements and store geometry inside. This can be meshes, or we can create BRep from these meshes with ODA BRep builder, which help us for creation correct boundary representation geometry. And we store only geometry inside the file formats. We don't have a plan to develop this functionality to the direction saving some additional information from architecture and something like that to the Collada and using it during Collada import. But anyone can extend this functionality. This is example of import, and we distribute its sources for any customer, and you can extend this functionality like you want, but we don't have plan to develop this functionality in this direction. Hello, let me please ask you two questions about management on Revit families, Revit family types. For example, I would like to read properties of the Revit families types and edit values of specific properties and save the file. Additionally, I would like to add new properties with specific values and save the file. It's about static values and also to have possibility to manage parameters. values. So currently we provide all information about properties. That means you can open file, you can get family types, and you can get these properties which are stored inside the file. But we doesn't provide possibility to change values of the properties. Currently, you can change only string parameters because they doesn't change geometry inside. But another types of parameters like integer, double, and object ID is it not possible to change because previously we should finish it functionality to edit geometry inside the family, and this also means verification this geometry, because when you change the properties, new value should be verified. Is it correct or not? For verification, I should recreate geometry and dependencies between different elements and try to recreate this one, and this will verify is new value correct or not. At this moment, not all functionality implemented, and we cannot verify new value for the parameters, and for prohibited to create wrong data inside the file, we doesn't provide such possibility yet. But you can create new properties and set this value for your new properties inside the families, but not properties which are stored inside the files. Formulas. Currently, we doesn't calculate something by formulas yet inside the families because formulas also require the possibility to recalculate geometry and verify this functionality. Next question: are all the property parameters of different types of entities available to view as in Autodesk Revit? We have functionality get list parameters where each element collecting their parameters by the whole hierarchy of inheritance and return list of parameters and get this information. This functionality implemented for many of elements and for many of hierarchies, but not for absolutely all yet. And for each properties, we also have possibility to convert internal representation to the customer representation. So you can use other BIM app, for example, and see how this functionality work for us. You can select any element in the tree or on the view during visualization and click right mouse button and call list of parameters. So we will show result of works this functionality for the element inside of the BIM. We will collect these parameters, and for each parameters we will get data from the file format and convert the data where they need. Some parameters are calculated like different volume, area, perimeter, and so on. And other parameters should be collected from related elements inside. So we have such functionality. You can easily test it on the BimRv. Hello, how difficult is to extract a schedule from the model and custom API? Is there any feature any feature present to do for us? As I understand, the schedule, it's such tables inside Revit files, and we provide all information which are stored inside the file, but the schedule usually use parameters and different additional steps on these parameters and information inside the parameters. So in this moment, this functionality partially work for our visualization, but we return all information which are stored inside the file for you. You can develop it for your file format, for example. Or we also are going to develop this functionality better for future releases because this functionality required implementation of parameters for most of elements which are using during creation in schedule, because this information usually created on the flight and not stored directly like a table inside the file. Is there any support?
I will pick up, yes, these questions. First of all, I see a question. Please share how you can create 3D PDF in ODE BIM application in form of block. First of all, I would like to show it actually, because I don't understand why it happens so that I lost this offsite. So I hope you can see my screen, and that's the ODE BIM application with the model opened. What we need to do, it's necessary to load the module with the commands that perform export to 3D PDF. And this model is called xpdf publish commands. After we load it, we have additional item in registered commands. And if we click it, for instance, let's enter the options. And now let us switch to our folder. And let's call it just one PDF. Save it. The implementation of the command will take some time. So after a while, you see that the file was created. Now let us open it in the Revit Reader. Wait for its content to be loaded and processed. And that's what we get. So that's our model. You can see that it can be rotated just in the Acrobat Reader. We can switch between the predefined views. Using our Publish SDK, it's also possible to add some animations. So to improve significantly the connection and the communication by means of PDF files. So to make these PDF files more straightforward, more easy for understanding, and more informative. And as you see, there are some differences compared to the original model, but that was done actually on purpose. So you could see that there may be some differences in the results, and probably some adjustments are required. It's just a general command that performs the general procedure of export to PDF. But that's how it looks and has the actual state. As for the blog and documentation, yes, we should have this described in the documentation. We'll provide this information to blog as well, and the video of this webinar with these steps will be already available. And just we can also switch back to our cloud view. As you see, probably it was frozen due to screencasting or similar things, so it's working fine as well. And as for another question asked about is there any support help to get started with the BimRv SDK? We have some support. First of all, it's our documentation, and in all the documentations there is a topic that is named exactly or with a similar name. It's called How to Create Your First Application in the introduction section. And on our YouTube channel, you can also find 3 videos that illustrate how to get started with the BimRv SDK and how to create your first application that is based on BimRv SDK and performs visualization of a model. So it's possible also to have a look at it. And now we're currently working to enlarge the amount of auxiliary materials and to improve the overall situation with getting started with getting deeper with our SDKs and similar things.
Next question, can you create both RVT and RFA files? For creation, template should be used. It should be used like for family files, and the same situation is model. And in fact, the same situation like it inside the Revit. You can open template and you can add some additional information in the file and save it like new file. Could you elaborate more on what kind of 3D you can export? Only meshes, materials with textures, UV coordinates, level of details, or do you support things like Nurbs, extrusions, etc.? Here, it's not absolutely clear where export from where, but if we say about 3D export, and this is export in another file formats, and so usually during the export we collect some information from visualization conveyor and collect this information to different structure and save the appropriate file formats. For example, Collada, object, style, or something like that. This can be. This usually this is meshes, and we also can collect materials and the textures which was created during visualization, and this information will be stored. But you also can create more sophisticated export and convert special BimRv, for example, BimRv geometry directly to your own BimRv file format. You can convert different curves, Nurbs, lines, arc, and so on, like the same elements in new file format, or collect different forms like extrusions, revolutions. This different levels of implementation, export possibilities. You have a lot of different possibilities. You can get simplified geometry in general way with a set of already simplified primitives, and or you can convert different high-level elements to one element and collect all this data during the export. We provide a lot of possibilities, but you should choose what you need and work on this for your application. BimRv supposedly support multi-thread vectorization, but there are no examples of ONMT vectorization. The provided vectorization example is a single-threaded. Where can I get sample with multi-threaded vectorization? Unfortunately for BimRv, now it doesn't support multi-thread vectorization yet. But this reason we cannot provide you example right now. We working on this direction, but currently this is not main task, and this required resources, and it's not so trivial to divide all element and support multi-threading for them. Currently, it's implemented for a set of elements, but not for all of them. Ivan, we currently use each version of Revit to process file to keep version integrity. We are hoping that you will offer similar compatibility. So, sorry, the question is not clear for me. I understand anyone can use some information about file format during conversion from the file format to their own. But I don't see a reason for that, because when we open any file format beginning from 2015, we converted the data internally to the latest file format and working with the latest file format internally, and all information will be provided in the similar format for our customer. I don't see differences in this way between 2015 file format and 2020 file format. If you get some element, for example, line or extrusion, and get some data from the element, you will get them in absolutely the same file format because data was converted. But if someone try to use files which are not converted in the latest file format, this is 2011 to 2015 now, the data will not be converted to the latest file format. We can read it and we can provide the data to customer like they are inside the file format. Anyone can use them like he know like he want, and in that moment he will research different file formats and try to convert the data to his file format in the same situation. Currently, we doesn't work on conversion old file format to the latest version, because this conversion is not trivial, and we stopped this work some time ago for concentrating on creation functionality, on possibility to create families, create different elements inside the families, and possibility to import families, and so on and so on. And in the moment we're talking about possibility to return to conversion previous file format when we will have a possibility to create most of elements inside. But this work will continue now. We still working on creation a lot of different elements, and currently work on conversion. Old file formats are stopped. So next question, that's meaning we include in our library and can neurally read in all information from Revit files. And this is continuing question about C#. You open any file with our file format, and you can get any element from the database. You can iterate by elements one by one, for example, and you will get any information from this element. You can get original data like they're stored inside the file formats during generated API. You also can get parameters, collect parameters from each element, and get data from this element. Yes, you can use it in such way. And as I remember, in the question was, should we use the visualize engine or not? No, you can use it if you want, but you also can use only SDK itself and get data. This is the question: what data you want to get, and how you can, and how you want to represent it. So this is your choice. We provide possibility for you. Next question: DWG, Collada, Revit, geometry conversion question. Can we skip Collada? Did it create a new view inside Revit files? Conversion, DWG, Collada, RVT files. Yes, theoretically it's possible, but we don't have such example for direct conversion data from DWG file format to Revit file format. So by this reason, we using some intermediate file format, for example, Collada, where we have a possibility to store 3D data in the Collada file formats, and after this we can collect data from Collada file formats and create data inside Revit file format. But you can work on export directly from DWG to Revit data. It's possible, but we don't have such example now, and we don't have plans for near future for implementing such not trivial export from DWG to Collada or to Revit. When you export in files or not files or data inside Revit, No, it's did it create new view inside Revit file? No, data itself and storing data inside the model, it's not connecting with a view. You create a new elements, you fill in it by geometry, and you store element in geometries. And this element can be visualized in different views already available inside the files, because each view collect elements which will be visualized before visualization, and elements itself doesn't by default doesn't have restrictions, so it will be visible only in one view or in another. It's possible to set such a restriction to hide some elements in different views, but it's different functionality. You can create additional view if you want. Is there a good match between the Revit 3D geometry used RFA files and IFC, or you have to reduce high-level BimRv extruded profiles, etc. Geometry to more primitive geometries like shells and so on. We implement in our IFC export in the same manner like Revit do it. So this means we create an IFC elements by Revit elements. So from the extrusion inside the Revit file format, we should get data from this extrusion loops on the sketches and create the same structure inside the IFC file format. So inside IFC file format, we will have not primitive geometry like different shells and so on, but we are working on conversion elements to similar elements in this file format. By this reason, this export is not so primitive and required a lot of work for implementation and research what functionality we should additionally implement it on our side, what functionality should be implemented on the IFC side, and how we can convert data from Revit representation to the IFC representation.
I think we will also consider this question when preparing the IFC webinar, and we'll try to provide more detailed information and probably an update regarding the status of this feature.
And next question, do you have CDA sample for BimRv? CDA, this is Common Data Access Interface. Yes, we have example Common Data Access Interface for Bim. RV, this is a wrapper about around our parameters. So in these examples, we collect data from the elements, get all parameters, and create the same similar CDA properties and return it during CDA interface. And also we provided two examples of representation file tree. One example is file tree in IFC style, and another one sample is tree of database in JSON style, Forge style, something like that. So such these examples are used in Visualize Viewer, so they can be Revit files can be opened visualize, and if you select and use the CDA in visualize, our example will be used for representation of these properties in this interface. Can you open 3D PDF to ODA and re-export Obj BX on other 3D format directly? I think you mean re-export this file formats to the Revit file format. No, we cannot export 3D PDF to Revit file formats, and I also know about FBX file formats, but we have example of export obj file format in our format, and in the moment we have also export. So export this mean from our file. And we can import an obj file format to the our and Collada file format and create a geometry inside Revit file format. This is two examples of import, and all ODA exports which are available for another file formats, and which are working with simplifier interface, with visualize interface, which collect data generally also available for BimRv, like DWF, Collada, and STL, and so on.
Okay.
Yeah.
One more question.
Is
there sorry, Ivan, go ahead.
Okay.
Is there documentation? Is there documentation or specification of the JSON export? I'm sure, and I know that there is documentation in the BimRv documentation regarding export to JSON. It should be in the group of topics like interaction with other formats in the developer guide. So please have a look at it, and please let us know if you need some more information or similar things. We will improve the documentation and provide you with the information you need. And there is one more question. Is it possible to use Visualize.js without OpenCloud for rendering a VSF file and do same operations, Benzom cutting as we do with a Visualize application? It's more a question to the OpenCloud team. You should have my email, Baravikov at opendesign.com in the emails that are about the webinar. So you can send this email to me with this question, and I will forward it to the OpenCloud team. It's more question to them, so they can provide all the information and the most efficient way of how to proceed and how to work in this situation, and what is possible and what's not, what limitation we have.
The next question, can I create new elements and Revit files using DWG geometry? No, you cannot create Revit elements directly by getting DWG entity and putting this to BimRv SDK. So it's not trivial, and it depends on information which are stored inside elements. So usually you should translate this data to some representation which are available inside the new file formats. So this is absolutely different situation for different elements. For example, it's quite trivial for different curves like line, arcs, and so on. And such geometry more or less can be easily converted to the BimRv file format because you can get GA classes and put it to our curve element, and this element will be created. But when we are talking about conversion BREP geometry, it's already not so trivial because you should convert one BREP representation to another one, and this is possible with our BREP builder and so on. Also, you can convert spatial BREP representation to BimRv BREP representation, but such geometry can be stored only in DirectShape or freeform elements. So you cannot you can't put such geometry inside wall, for example, or something like that. Some special elements should be created directly, and for each element, such the process of creation is different, and it should be analyzed and compare where should I get data inside the one file format and how I put data to another file format and do it correctly. So directly getting element from DWG, some entities from DWG and putting this to Revit file formats, no, it's not work. And some not trivial export should be implemented for this functionality. So as I see, there are no additional questions right now. And one more. Let's say I have polyphase mesh and access to all its data. Can I create Revit element with this data? Yes, it's possible for polyphase mesh, but you should translate this data to our own data. This is a similar situation like we have with Collada Import. I don't see big differences because inside the Collada also will find a set of triangles and set of shells, and I should convert from this one to our file format, and it's possible. But each geometry type is different, and some of them can be easily converted, and another one it's not so trivial. There is any plan to add the C# support for the library? We have such plans strategically, but I cannot say it will be created next year or faster. It's not so. Currently, this work are not started for this file format, and also another question is for support.NET interface. It's what kind of support we're going for. Currently, we don't have strong plans with data, but for support.NET interface for BIM. But strategically, yes, we are going to create such. Can I export Revit family files into Option or Collada and before change parameters values, geometry parameters to export regenerated Revit family models? You can export Revit family to obj or Collada files? Yes, you can, but during the export, you export in just geometry. Family contains geometry for current state of parameters, so for current family type. You cannot change family type and get another sort of geometry, because currently we will not recalculate geometry for elements. But geometry which is stored inside the files, yes, will be exported. It's absolutely the same geometry, like in model and so on. There are no any different.
Okay, looks we are done with the questions for now. Please feel free to ask your questions. You have access to our forum. You have, my email. You can address our support@opendesign.com address to post your questions. So any type of communication that looks efficient and convenient for you, we will be glad to answer your questions. We wish to thank you all for taking part in this webinar, and we are glad that you joined us. We appreciate your time, and we hope that you will join our other webinars as well. And just reminding that the next one is our IFC webinar. So we will be glad to see you all at IFC webinar as well. So again, wish to thank you all for your time, and please take care, be healthy, and goodbye everybody. We will send the emails with the record of this webinar to everyone in the email, to all the registrants, so you can see, you can watch, and you can share if you can.